If you've ever wondered why some MK Ultra survivors can be triggered with a single word, phone tone, or hand gesture decades later, or why certain celebrities seem to glitch out on camera like they just got rebooted, tonight we're pulling the curtain all the way back. This is the one they don't want out on the algorithm. These are the exact 7 elements the program has always needed to create a programmable human being. What actually happens inside the mind and body when they succeed, and a handful of methods that have pulled real survivors out of the abyss. The first element is extreme, repeated trauma before the age of 6, ideally before age 3. The younger the brain, the less integrated the personality, and deliberate sexual abuse, near drowning, witnessing staged murders, or electroshock while restraint forces the mind to fracture into dissociated parts just to survive. Understand that clinicians associate victims under the MK Ultra program as broken individuals dealing with DID, which is short for dissociative identity disorder. The handlers assigned to these victims refer to them the diamond, meaning there's hundreds of pockets within the mind they can fill with programmable suggestions. Physical effects now visible on MRI include a shrunken hippocampus, an overactive amygdala, corpus callosum scarring from ECT, and adrenal burnout that leaves most survivors in their 40s looking 60 years old. There are key figures who were forcibly led into the MK Ultra project known as Project Monarch. Organized sadistic abuse before the child can even form continuous memory. The second element is drugs that cross the blood-brain barrier fast, such as LSD-25, scopolamine, BZ, ketamine analogs, and proprietary adrenochrome derivatives. These drugs aren't there to expand consciousness but to drop the critical factor so suggestions go straight into the subconscious. The third element is hypnosis combined with repetitive audio loops, the so-called psychic driving tapes. Ewan Cameron's tapes at McGill ran 16 hours a day for weeks, repeating phrases like, "You are nothing, you love your handler, you will obey the voice." When the brain is in theta state from drugs or electroshock, these loops override identity like a hard drive. The fourth element is electroconvulsive therapy at 75 to 150 volts in page mode. Standard therapeutic ECT today uses 0.8 to 1 second pulses, but MK Ultra uses 30 to 90 second bursts aimed at temples and the spine simultaneously, to induce grand mal seizures that wipe short-term memory and create amnesia barriers between alters. The fifth element is sensory deprivation or overload for days or weeks, using water tanks, hoods, white noise helmets, or the opposite constant flashing lights and 140 dB sounds. This collapses the victim's sense of time and self, making them cling to the handler as the only fixed point. The sixth element is a handler who alternates torture and love, creating trauma bonding. It's Stockholm Syndrome on steroids, where the same person who burns you with cigarettes one day brings you ice cream the next, and the mind bonds to the abuser for survival, turning that attachment into a lifelong backdoor. The seventh element is trigger cues implanted under hypnosis and drugs, such as colors, numbers, hand signs, nursery rhymes, Disney songs, or specific smells. These are anchored to alters so the person can be activated decades later without conscious awareness. If even one of these 7 is missing, the programming isn't stable, which is why multi-generational families or orphanages are preferred total control from birth. When all 7 elements hit, the brain does exactly what it evolved to do under unbearable trauma. It then splits as an end result. It's important to understand these MK Ultra programs can produce psychological effects that bolsters issues such as amnesia to the point where it seems more durable than a cast iron wall 10 inches thick top to bottom. The International Society for the Study of Trauma and Dissociation, ISSTD, guidelines stress adhering to basic psych principles, which are building safety, trust, and phased treatment. For DID from extreme abuse, that manifests due to MK-Ultra style fracturing, and the therapy focuses on identifying and mapping alters, gently exploring dissociated parts or separating compartments, without forcing integration too soon. Therapists help survivors communicate internally, reducing amnesia barriers and conflicts, taking the following steps. Therapists would use effective techniques to safely revisit and reframe events, turning survival adaptations, or basically resolving areas within the mind that were split or fractured psychologically. This isn't quick, often years, but it's the hardest part, as it requires the victim recovering from the trauma to face the mental abuse inflicted directly, and this gets into the specific therapies that have shown promise during the recovery process. Keep in mind these are resources deriving from clinical reports and survivor feedback geared to methods for deprogramming and healing, starting with eye movement desensitization and reprocessing, EMDR. This is huge for trauma bonding and trigger dismantling. It uses bilateral stimulation, eye movements, taps, to reprocess traumatic memories, reducing their emotional charge. Survivors report it helps unlink cues, a color or rhyme, from automatic responses, unlocking the back door for their handlers to gain access into their mind. In books like Healing the Unimaginable, it's cited for ritual abuse mind control cases, where it neutralizes programmed fears without hypnosis, which can risk false memories. Both cognitive behavioral therapy (CBT) and dialectical behavior therapy (DBT) can tackle the daily fallout, managing switches, anxiety from amygdala overactivity, or self-sabotage from trauma bonds. CBT reframes distorted beliefs. I deserve the abuse. While DBT builds emotional regulation skills, like mindfulness to spot overload triggers. They are often combined with meds for co-occurring issues like depression or PTSD. Schema therapy is a newer integrative approach that's being tested for DID, focusing on unmet childhood needs and modes, similar to alters. It helps survivors rewrite the handler as my savior narrative, fostering self-compassion. Case reports show it reduces dissociation by addressing core schemas from early trauma. Neurofeedback is used to alter brain waves by boosting the alpha and theta balance level to counter the disruption from ECT or sensory extremes. The objective there is to reduce the risks of reprogramming triggers and to help repair hippocampal damaging effects. Hypnosis is a sophisticated way to therapeutically access and neutralize implants. But it should be only with trained pros. It's about empowerment. It's part of a step-by-step process to identify and dissolve deceptive cues, often alongside grounding techniques to prevent regression. Under pharmacotherapy, medications such as SSRIs, or tricyclics for mood stabilization, anti-anxiety meds for acute episodes, but no magic pill for integration. It's symptom management. They should be engaging in activities such as holistic exercises like yoga, art therapy, or support groups, like survivorship.org. That all of the horrific programming sessions never fully leave, but these are the same people who can work to get their lives back on track. So if you ever meet someone who flinches at the color purple, can't remember their childhood, or goes sudden robotic when a phone rings 3 times, might be the thing to provide you a clue why they freeze as if an imaginary police officer told them to do so. LSD is one of the main factors entered into MK-Ultra programming, along with intense electroshock, are combined to help fracture barriers within the mind. By itself, it's proven its capabilities. Just look at what took place back in 1969, out in Bethel, New York during that Woodstock Music Festival. There were thousands of out-of-control teens and 20-something-year-olds who were completely stoned on a foreign substance around that time. Now combine that with all of that psychedelic music, the constant messing around who knows where out on that field, or in a vehicle it was raining that weekend, so go figure, and who could possibly guess the state they were in mentally. LSD is able to heighten the mind's unpleasant dreams, and what about the overbearing triggers that were set off within those young folks? One could only imagine the deep mental mayhem that was going on in their heads. This also happens to point a huge finger at the infamous Manson family, where Charles Manson was brainwashing his young followers faster than a professional cook at your local Denny's could flip a flapjack pancake. And what about professed doctors such as Jolly West, whose speciality was controlling a victim's mind to the highest degree using LSD? Well, that will be the continuation of this topic matter in the next video. Which are the horrific effects? and merciless trauma MK Ultra victims faced years after all of the manipulation tactics used to fracture their minds, and within the carnage that continues to linger deep within their consciousness serves as a constant reminder long after they sought help that seemed pointless despite their best efforts. Hey, hit the like button if you were vastly informed about the mind-altering mechanics in this first part MK Ultra video, and make sure to subscribe to Mind Blast Mechanics, where we dive deep into the observations that matter. Don't miss our next video, so make sure to tap that bell. Thanks for watching.